Chipo Mwale was looking forward to a quiet Saturday morning in Lusaka, Zambia. At 29, she had learned to enjoy her little routines: coffee, the soft hum of the city waking up, a chance to finally breathe. That calm shattered when her phone rang. It was the local bank, and the voice on the other end was tense, almost hesitant. Her parents, Joseph and Mumbai, had done something shocking. They had sold her house. Temporarily, they insisted, to pay for her younger sister Zanil's wedding, which was shaping up to be more extravagant than anything Chipo could remember. Panic hit her in waves. She grabbed her bag and ran to her house, heart hammering in her chest. When she arrived, strangers were moving inside, carrying boxes, setting up equipment she didn't recognize. The air smelled of new electronics, and every step she took echoed in the rooms that had once felt like her sanctuary. Then, a bank clerk leaned close and whispered something that froze her blood. "Ma'am, this site has federal surveillance restriction. They shouldn't have access." Suddenly, it wasn't just her house that was at stake. This was bigger, far bigger. Chipo felt a mix of betrayal, fear, and disbelief. Her parents, who had always been her anchors, had unknowingly, or maybe carelessly, put her in a situation that could ruin her life. She realized, with a sinking stomach, that this wasn't just a financial mistake. It was a danger she wasn't prepared for, and the clock was already ticking. Chipo sat in her now empty living room, trying to make sense of everything. Her mind wandered back to her childhood, to the life she had always known. Growing up, her family was full of contrast. Zanil, her younger sister, was the star of every room, charming, funny, and effortlessly liked by everyone. People were drawn to her smile and the way she could light up a party. Chipo, on the other hand, was quieter. She focused on her schoolwork, on helping around the house, on keeping things from falling apart when her parents got busy or distracted. From a young age, Chipo had learned to shoulder responsibility. When bills were forgotten, she reminded. When little crises appeared, she solved them. When family tensions flared, she stayed calm and kept peace. She was the one who fixed mistakes no one noticed, who stayed up late to make sure homework was done, chores completed, and everyone else could shine. Yet, all her efforts often went unrecognized. Her parents leaned on her steadiness like it was expected, not something to celebrate. She rarely heard, "Thank you," and rarely felt like her hard work mattered outside the small circle of daily survival. Looking back, she realized this pattern had shaped her life. She was dependable, cautious, and careful, always thinking 2 steps ahead. It was who she was, and that made the betrayal today hurt even more. The people she trusted, the ones she had protected and supported her whole life, had made a reckless decision that could ruin everything she had built. The sting wasn't just about money or a house. It was the realization that even after years of sacrifice, the people closest to her could put her life at risk without a second thought. Chipo sat at the bank, her hands trembling as she tried to process what the clerk was telling her. She had thought this was just a misunderstanding about her house, a messy family mistake. But it was so much worse. Her house wasn't just a home, it was a federal operations site. Sensitive data, surveillance equipment, government contracts, all of it happening right under her roof. The moment she realized that, panic hit her like a punch to the chest. The clerk's voice dropped to a whisper. "Ma'am, unauthorized access could lead to serious criminal charges. This isn't just a property issue." Chipo felt her stomach twist. Her parents' decision to sell her house, temporarily, for Zanil's wedding wasn't just reckless, it was dangerous. Someone could get in trouble, and if the authorities found out, it could be her name on the line. She thought of her career, her reputation, the years she had worked quietly and carefully to build a life that others depended on but rarely noticed. All of that could vanish in an instant. She tried to breathe, to think clearly, but fear clawed at her. Every scenario she imagined was worse than the last. Fines, criminal charges, even losing her property permanently, it was all possible. The people she loved and trusted had unknowingly dragged her into a legal and federal nightmare. Chipo's mind raced, realizing she had to act fast. This wasn't a family squabble or a simple misunderstanding. It was a high-stakes disaster, and she was the only one who could stop it before it destroyed everything she had worked for. Chipo took a deep breath and dialed her parents' number, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk about the house," she said, forcing calm into every word. On the other end, Joseph sounded confused, and Mumbai laughed nervously. They didn't seem to understand the gravity of the situation. To them, it was a simple favor, helping Zanil have a beautiful wedding. They didn't see that their actions had put Chipo's life, her career, and even her freedom at risk. As she explained, trying to make them grasp the federal restrictions and the potential legal consequences, their responses frustrated her. "Oh, cheapo, we just wanted to help," her mother said. "It's not that serious," her father added. Cheapo felt a hot surge of anger mixed with disbelief. She had spent her life protecting the family, covering for mistakes, keeping things together, and now they were casually putting everything in jeopardy. Her heart ached. She didn't want to hurt them or start a fight, but the truth was unavoidable. This wasn't just a financial slip-up. It was reckless, dangerous, and could destroy everything she had worked for. Every word she spoke carried the weight of years of responsibility and sacrifices no one had thanked her for. For a moment, she almost gave in, tried to soften the edges, remind herself that they were her parents. But the reality was clear. Their naivety wasn't harmless anymore. This was bigger than family favors. It was a threat to her life and her future, and she could no longer protect them at the expense of herself. She had to make them see the danger before it was too late. Cheapo returned to her house, her mind racing. She knew she couldn't rely on her parents to fix this, and panic wasn't going to help. She needed to understand exactly what she was dealing with. She started taking photos of every strange device and installation in her home, careful not to touch anything that might trigger alarms. She went through papers she found, scanning for anything that explained what kind of federal operation was running there. Every detail mattered, and she made sure nothing was overlooked. Next, she reached out to a lawyer she trusted, someone who had handled sensitive cases before. She explained the situation in detail, sending photos and documents, and listened carefully as the lawyer outlined the risks: massive fines, potential criminal charges, and the possibility of losing her property entirely. Cheapo felt the weight of the danger pressing down on her, but instead of freezing, she focused. She had to know every angle, every consequence, so she could plan her next move. She also called a cybersecurity expert, who walked her through the technical side of things, how the equipment could be tampered with, how any unauthorized access could be traced, and just how serious the breach really was. Hearing it from a professional made it real. This wasn't just a family misunderstanding, it was a legal and technical nightmare. As she documented and analyzed everything, Cheapo felt a strange mixture of fear and clarity. She understood the threat now, fully and in detail, and that understanding gave her power. The more she learned, the more she realized she could handle this. It wouldn't be easy, but with careful planning and strategy, she could protect her home, her future, and herself. The danger was real, but so was her determination. Cheapo knew that losing her cool would only make things worse. She had to act, but carefully, so she decided on a plan, quiet, controlled, and strategic. On the outside, she acted calm whenever she spoke to her parents, pretending to accept their explanation for selling the house. They saw her nodding, asking polite questions, and smiling, thinking everything was fine. Inside, however, she was already several steps ahead. Her first priority was federal approval. She contacted the relevant authorities, explaining the situation and requesting permission to reclaim her property. She documented every interaction, every email, every call. Each move was calculated, making sure she stayed within the rules while building a strong case that couldn't be ignored. At the same time, she quietly collected evidence of her parents' mistakes, the unauthorized access, the mishandling of sensitive information, and the potential risks they had caused. Every photo, every document, every note added weight to her case. Cheapo felt a strange thrill in the careful planning. She wasn't just reacting, she was controlling the situation from behind the scenes. Her parents remained blissfully unaware, confident that everything was under control, while Cheapo was quietly preparing the tools she needed to protect herself and her home. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt a sense of power. She wasn't just surviving a family crisis, she was turning it into a situation she could manage. Every careful step, every quiet observation, and every document gathered brought her closer to reclaiming her house and safeguarding her life. The tension was high, but so was her confidence. She knew the storm was coming, and she would be ready. As the days passed, Zanil's wedding plans were in full swing. Invitations had gone out, decorations were being ordered, and the family was caught up in the excitement of it all. Cheapo watched quietly from the sidelines, careful not to reveal too much too soon. She knew that the more her parents and sister assumed everything was fine, the more effective her next steps would be. Slowly, she began dropping subtle hints about the house. A question here, a comment there, nothing direct, but enough to make her family pause. "I wonder if the authorities have checked that equipment yet," she said casually one evening. "Or, we should probably make sure everything is in order before the wedding, just in case." At first, her parents brushed it off, laughing nervously. Zanil rolled her eyes, too caught up in her own excitement to notice. but Chipo's careful nudges planted seeds of doubt. Panic started to creep in. Vendors were double-checked, schedules were reconsidered, and her parents' confident smiles began to falter. She could see it in their faces, the realization that their overconfidence and sense of entitlement might be about to cost them dearly. The wedding chaos collided with a looming threat over the house, creating a tense, almost cinematic atmosphere. Chipo moved through the family's frantic energy with quiet control, observing, documenting, and planning. Every reaction she noticed became another piece of evidence, another way to strengthen her position. What had started as a joyful celebration slowly transformed into a high-stakes drama, and Chipo was the only one fully aware of how close the family was to disaster. The suspense hung in the air, and with every passing hour, the tension grew, making it clear that this wedding would be remembered for more than just vows and flowers. Chipo called her parents and Zanil together, asking them to meet at the house. She made it sound casual, but inside she was focused and ready. Before they arrived, she set up her phone to record everything. She knew words mattered, and she wanted a clear record of the conversation. When the family gathered, she stayed calm, speaking slowly and deliberately, letting the weight of her presence do part of the work. "I need to explain something important," she began. She went through everything: the federal restrictions on the house, the potential criminal consequences of unauthorized access, and the risks her parents' actions had created. She showed them the photos, the documents, and the records of her communications with the authorities and experts. Every piece of evidence was laid out clearly, leaving little room for denial. Her parents' faces changed as they listened. Shock first, then disbelief. Joseph opened his mouth to argue, Mumbai's eyes filled with worry, and Zanil looked stunned. But Chipo didn't falter. She didn't raise her voice or plead. She simply presented the facts. As the reality sank in, her parents' shock turned to anger. "How could you make this sound so dramatic?" her father snapped. "We were only trying to help," her mother cried. Chipo remained composed, letting them react while she held control. She wasn't just defending her property. She was reclaiming authority over a situation that could have destroyed her. The power had shifted quietly, completely. She had prepared, planned, and executed with precision. By the time the meeting ended, it was clear. Chipo was no longer just the responsible daughter. She was the one steering the family through the chaos, and they had no choice but to follow. The calm certainty in her voice left no room for argument, no way to undo what she had set in motion. After weeks of careful planning and legal maneuvering, Chipo finally felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The federal authorities had approved her request to reclaim the house, and official documents confirmed that no one could enter or tamper with it without her permission. Every installation was secured, and the sensitive equipment was now properly monitored under her oversight. She had protected not just her property, but her career, her reputation, and her future. Meanwhile, Zanil's wedding went ahead, but in a completely different location. This time, Zanil and their parents handled the arrangements themselves, paying for everything without touching Chipo's house or resources. Watching from a distance, Chipo felt a mix of relief and quiet pride. The wedding chaos had passed, and no lasting damage had been done, except a few bruised egos. The biggest victory, however, was not legal, it was personal. Chipo sat down with her parents and set clear boundaries for the first time in her life. She explained that she could no longer allow her generosity or responsibility to be taken for granted. No more last-minute schemes, no more reckless decisions that put her at risk, and no more manipulation. It wasn't easy, emotions ran high, and her parents struggled with the new rules. But Chipo remained firm. She knew her life was hers to protect, and she would not compromise it again, even for family. For Chipo, this was a quiet kind of triumph. She hadn't lashed out or sought revenge. Instead, she had been clever, patient, and controlled, turning a potentially disastrous situation into a story of careful strategy and personal empowerment. The house was hers, her boundaries were clear, and she finally felt fully in charge of her life. It was a victory earned through intelligence and calm determination, not anger or retaliation. Sitting quietly in her home, Chipo finally let herself reflect on everything that had happened. The betrayal had cut deep. Her own parents, the people she trusted most, had acted without thinking and put her in real danger. The house, the legal risks, the potential career fallout, it had all been terrifying. Yet, through the panic and chaos, she discovered something powerful about herself. She was stronger, smarter, and more capable than she had ever realized. Chipo had faced fear and uncertainty head-on. She had stayed calm when others panicked, planned carefully when chaos surrounded her, and acted decisively when it mattered most. She had reclaimed not just her house, but her independence, her boundaries, and her confidence. The experience left her with a clear understanding. Being responsible and patient, even in the face of betrayal, could turn a dangerous situation into a victory. Looking ahead, Chipo felt empowered. She knew she would never allow anyone to endanger her life or take advantage of her trust again. And while the ordeal had tested her, it had also proven that courage paired with careful thinking could overcome even the most unexpected and high-stakes challenges. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, stronger and more in control than ever.